Hey y'all, I'm Raina Harper, and welcome to EveRe-Watch Way, where I podcast a spell that takes a hold of you. For the show where I reminisce and recap the Nickelodeon fantasy series Every Which Way. We cover each episode of the show here, and I go into detail on everything relating to what happens with the show, what I remember from keeping up with it in 2014 and 15, and all the fun knowledge and commentary I can bring in with it. Lately I've been bursting at the seams with lovely people who come on as guests, and this time, because I helped catch his pet iguana, call forward for later, someone had graciously agreed to catch this episode with me. I'm delighted to welcome YouTuber and film and video game commentary extraordinaire, Abram Buehner of Backlog Banter.
Raina, thank you very much for having me. I'm very, very excited to come on.
I'm very grateful for you for taking the time. So could you let me and our audience know what got you into making commentary online, and especially I know you run your channel with several other friends, so catch our listeners up for people who might not be aware.
Yeah, sure. So I, along with my good friend Tucker Hazel, run a video game channel called Backlog Banter, and then the two of us and two of our other friends, Tanner and Timo, the four of us, have another similarly named channel called Backlot Banter. First one about video games, second one about film.
Yeah.
We really started it in earnest back in 2020 during the pandemic, just to keep in touch and have something to do. And it's only sort of grown from there and become sort of a regular part of our routines. So it's been a number of years working on this. I really love doing it. I also cover games in another outlet for my professional work with a company called Lost and Cult. We make books about video games. So I do a lot of writing and a lot of editing about games and the gaming industry and the people who make games and the politics and culture of the space. So I really love talking about pop culture and art and sort of the personal connection we have to it. And I'm really excited to sit with you today and talk about Every Which Way.
Wow, that's so awesome. And yeah, I've been over the last year or so I found your channel and followed what you do, and you and you and your friends Tucker, Timo, and Tanner, and it's really quite something for those listening who I haven't mentioned them to. It's really awesome. They do their quest for the bestest series, talking about currently Palme d'Or winning movies and previously Oscar winning Best Pictures. They do really thoughtful commentary, and I'm excited to have Abram on today.
Well, thank you very much.
I know it'll be especially entertaining because I'm dropping you in on the deep end with this one.
Yeah.
Starting off, what were your impressions of what this show would be when I mentioned it to you, or in our Discord server first, and because I'm assuming I don't know for a fact, but you hadn't heard of this show before?
No, I hadn't. It was interesting because when I learned it was a Nickelodeon show, it kind of calibrated my expectations a little bit because I love Nick. I mean, mostly what I was watching was iCarly. Like, that's my show. I loved that so much as a kid. And my girlfriend, she is a massive fan of House of Anubis, if you're familiar. And when I told her that I was going to do this with you, she was talking about how when she was younger, she tried watching Every Which Way, but for her, it didn't quite stack up to House of Anubis. So that was her allegiance in this kind of era of Nickelodeon. So I had like a general idea of what to expect, particularly because I was also a big fan of The Wizards of Waverly Place as a kid. So those are kind of like my touchstones coming in. I didn't quite expect it would be what it ended up being in its editing and particularly in its plot points. But yeah, it was fun to sort of dip my toe in for 2 episodes here.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you found it an enjoyable time preparing. And I'll say myself that I leading up to 2014, this premiered like right at the start of 2014, like January 2nd or 3rd, and I just like was in my room. My sister or someone was had Nickelodeon on, and I just heard an advert for it, and I was like, what is this? like, oh, a new show about witches. That sounds like it could be fun. Then I caught an episode, and well, and I'm sure you've noticed, it's very chronologically based. It's like you have to it's they expect you to like know its entire plot like chronologically,
Right.
um and just keep up with it that way. And so me at a younger age was hooked, partially because most shows, like I'd watched a bunch that you had mentioned as well, and been into kids shows like that. And but there are several key differences with this one, and I that hadn't known before. Like, this is essentially a telenovela. Uh, like, it's a remake of a Spanish language telenovela with the same basic premise and like level of visuals, called Grachi, made in Latin America, or shown in Latin America. And it has like several key differences, like absence of a laugh track, and just a different aesthetic, and like, I suppose, less smooth style. Like seeing it today, or like even back then, I could tell like its production value was lesser than your usual like Wizards of Waverly Place or something like that. But and like it was like a guilty pleasure to me even then. But I just got found it something I like couldn't put down. And so I figured it was a perfect candidate, like all these years later, since I was like a one person cheerleader for it in my life, to start a podcast covering it and
Yeah.
going through it chronologically. And I figured it would be pretty entertaining to like with my guests such as yourself, just get your opinions on by having you just drop in, because I couldn't expect like everyone to like watch the entire thing, but or at least up to the point that we are now. So I'm glad for you taking the time, and we'll get into your opinions and moment to moment reactions, because oh boy,
Sure.
I even felt myself like these two episodes that we're covering today are like the most unhinged ones yet. I even felt that, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So last episode, we were left on a cliffhanger of Daniel coming to Emma's room through the window, where Daniel apologizes for his out of nowhere cruel comments. Yeah. So Daniel felt like he was possessed by magic. They patch up and confess their feelings to each other, with Daniel expressing how he loves Emma's genuine nature, saying, "What you see is what you get," which I feel like you could take a lot of ways. And Emma is about to share something big, the secret of her magic powers, saying, "Sorry, Lily." Lily then calls out in the house and enters the scene with them. Daniel finds it suspicious that she'd be visiting Emma outside of school, but they lie that she is a distant relation. And compared to a lot of recent episodes, this is a pretty smoothly done lie. Still not done great. Where she says that he's her cousin's brother's sister's stepson's aunt. She says it really fast in a funny word salad, and she delivers it with righteous conviction, like says it with a fully straight face. And I'm assuming to try and throw him off, and like make him not think about it, because she's of course her Emma's magic guardian. It Also, isn't any sibling of your cousin still your cousin? I paused. I went through this word by word. Like, her cousin's brother, so it's still her cousin. Cousin's brother's sisters. Okay, if anyone was actually like paying attention, they would know you're lying. um, Cousin's brother's sisters. Am I missing something? Would anyone actually say it that way?
No, I think that you're sort of relying on the confusion to hope that they don't ask any further questions. I think if somebody said this to me, I would just try to end the conversation,
Right.
to be honest with you.
Sure. Which, yeah, I mean, it does work that way. It's like it was like like in Monsters Incorporated with Boo in the monster costume. Like, it's my cousin's sisters, whatever. Um, Stepson's aunt. But then she tries to make it more believable. Like, oh, Emma's dad is my cousin. Sure. but yeah, he does kind of try and just glaze past or breeze past that. And as she's about to leave them be until Daniel leaves, she's like, I'll just go in the other room for a minute and let you finish your conversation. But then she overhears that Daniel was about to be told the truth by Emma, and tells him through an excuse of Francisco coming home, and we know through their history that Daniel and Emma's dad do not get along, that he needs to leave, and through she says, through the window you came in, and he says, how'd you know I came in through the window? And she says, I didn't, but now I do. Um, he, and he says, oh, you're one of those adults. Which
I thought that was a good bit.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not the wittiest script I've ever had the privilege of experiencing, but there's some clever dialogue exchange in there. I think it's we were talking before about how the production value isn't sort of on par with a lot of its peers or even predecessors to some extent. I thought on a script perspective, I was sort of seeing it. I'm like, yeah, this is very archetypal, but I think very successful for this sort of like caliber and canon of like young adult sitcoms. So
yeah.
I was actually pleasantly surprised by the writing, I would say.
Wow, that I'm glad you felt that. And that's yeah, most of the people in my life haven't been that charitable. Just being like or phrase in like a positive way. It's there are good bits like the you're one of those adults, but which becomes like a running bit in the scene where Daniel leaves awkwardly while looking in Emma's eyes, like tripping over things like but he like maintains a straight smiling face, and then Lily reveals she was there to help plan stealing the Hexerin back, and that she has a key in her Magic Guardians kit that can open any door. It's like the spell Aloha Mora. I'm paying to reference Harry Potter at all, but it's essentially that. And
sure.
She gets onto Emma for being about to spill her magic secret again, because because in because I said this in the last episode. This is right after the scene in which Lily told Emma that she was going to have to erase Tony's memory for telling him about magic. So she just feels as though she could get away with it, or maybe she's just very forgetful. One of the two. So she basically says, you really need to keep this as a secret. Like I'm like, really, this is serious. And then Francisco returns, and so Emma knows that he can't see Lily, so she casts a spell to teleport Lily to school, and for the third straight time after herself and with Andy, she can't send anyone anywhere other than the school swimming pool. That's a running bit that continues throughout the show, where and I haven't, like, of course, rewatched the whole thing yet, but I'm pretty sure that's never explained why. It's a pretty funny thing.
Well, it's interesting because obviously we move out of that moment of her arriving in the pool very, very quickly, and then we're into this next bit with the cookies and the kids sort of baking the cookies with their power by hand. And what I was sort of appreciating about the show as I was watching it, obviously without any context, is that it really loves bits. Like there's always a bit, and there's always a bit that is edited into and out of extremely fast.
Oh yeah.
Like we're in that pool just long enough to get like the reaction of the lifeguard, whoever that guy was, and then we're gone. Then we gotta start making cookies. We're gonna start eating the cookies. I thought that the pace of it was like super propulsive in like almost a too fast like sort of way. Like we're well over the bit speed limit, I think, in this show.
I'll start using that phrase now, the bit speed limit. It's that's something that my cousin and I have like noted in our last episode, where it's like every scene is super short. And and we surmised that it was, probably through market research about kids' attention spans that they felt the need to do that. But or maybe it was like a strongly felt creative decision. It could be. Um, but, I'll have to try and like analyze that further. Just, I mean, it does largely uh work. It keeps things propulsive, as you say. Um, and when with regards to the guy who sees her, that's Coach Julio, who's been suspicious about like Lily and her connection to magic before, and he's just standing there, and all of a sudden sees her, presumably just saw her like pop in like it right next to the
Yeah.
or above the pool and falls in, and he's like, yet another thing to raise my suspicions. And he's like looking at her, and she tries to like play it off like, oh, whoops, just fell in the pool. Uh, um, but yeah, that's been running thing of like, oh, I'm getting closer to finding out what your involvement is. Um, and so we cut to another scene where Diego and Mac, Daniel's friends, come over to Daniel's house while he's out, and while his mom and sister Melanie are preparing their birthday party for their youngest brother Tommy, which is going to be the next day. They're baking chocolate chip cookies. Mrs. Miller lets them hang around while they wait for him, and Melanie reveals that they're giving Tommy a pet iguana as a gift, but she also kind of says that it's a gift for him, but essentially for all three of them, the the terrible three siblings. Um, and the dad apparently hadn't this they hadn't run this by the dad, and he's like, "What? You're getting an iguana? Like, I'm not cool with this." But then he decides, in a pretty funny moment, I think, to be like, "Let's take this quiet and civil conversation in the other room."
Yeah, I like that as well.
Diego and Mac asked to help with the cookies, and I just love how Melanie just doesn't trust them. She's like, "All right," and so Diego picks up two pieces of the balled up cookie dough, and they instantly, um, through Diego's heat generating Kanai powers, turn into fully baked cookies in his hands. Um, yeah, and I always thought to myself like, yeah, that's how heat would work. It just pops up as fully baked cookies. Um, but maybe that's what the magic is. Like it like turns into the end result of that being heated. Just um, it, it just part of the magic is making it like spring out fully formed as uh, cooked or as being frozen by ice, whatever the exact power being used is.
Yeah, I sort of found myself just sort of going along with whatever the magic was,
Mhm.
because obviously there's the scene we find ourselves in shortly after with the oatmeal,
Mhm.
but it's like blue oatmeal. And so, I mean, obviously you have more context and are more invested in the sort of lore
Mhm.
of the magic and all of this stuff. But in my view, I'm just like, okay, it invites a solid enough bit if this person gets covered in oatmeal or if those cookies get done instantly. So
Yeah.
why not?
Sure.
I thought that flexibility was solid enough, even if I'm just sort of perplexed, which is skipping ahead a little bit. But the whole icicle in the nose, it's
Mhm.
very
Yeah.
I feel like all of these kids are a moment away perpetually from being caught,
Yeah.
um, which I assume is just a dynamic throughout the whole show.
Yeah, they certainly are. Like they're always, but also at the same time, like everyone who doesn't know about magic is like has a great amount of leeway to give a blind eye to like weird things that they see. Like oh, someone like especially Maddie being like flagrant with her magic, like it casts a spell like like a aura of magic comes out of her hand, and presumably people are able to see it in the room, but like no one comments on it or like bats an eye. um uh, or she teleports into a crowded room, no one bats an eye. And my friend Monet, who was on recently, she was like, oh, she figures that they're just in a universe where people are like bound to give a bit of leeway to things like that. Like, oh, weird things just happen sometimes. It's it's a normal day for us. And it's pretty funny how like just how far off people's reactions a lot of the time tend to be from like what yours or mine probably would be, and 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 also that no one able seems to be able to like lie smoothly. They always like draw attention to themselves. Like, yeah, I was doing this, haha, yeah, or what were we doing, Katie? Uh, but I mean, the characters are getting a little bit better in these two episodes than they were in like the past three or four. So Diego even touches the baking tray. All the balls of cookie dough turn into fully baked cookies. So they're like, "Uh oh, panic! We gotta hide the evidence." So they shovel the cookies into their mouth, and only for Melanie and Mrs. Miller. Insert Robert Altman's McCabe and Mrs. Miller. That joke here. Uh, have you ever watched that movie?
I haven't. I just always this is the same. It's the same with when I watch Seinfeld. I love specific references, even if I don't get them. To me, the concept of niche reference is intrinsically funny.
Yeah, yeah. That wasn't their reference. That was my reference. Cause
No, that's why I like it. That's why I like this commentary you're adding into the notes here.
thank you. Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. I know. So our friend Steven, who's on our Discord, he's a very his knowledge of films of all sorts like out surpasses like any of us that we know, and
Yeah.
and like I've always like brought something like that I can't count on anyone in my life having seen, and he'll be like, oh yeah, this and this about it, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, I'm sure he'll appreciate this part. So anyway, Melanie and Mrs. Miller come back and chastise them once they see it, them shoveling the cookies into their mouth, and it doesn't cross their mind that the dough like they left the room, they were just unbaked balls of cookie dough. They come back in, they're eating fully baked cookies that came out of nowhere, and they're just distracted by the fact that they're eating the things that they were making, and sloppily too. Just like, oh my god, we gotta eat all of them. Yeah, pretty humorous scene there. We were also left last time with Maddie being caught hiding that she'd found the hexerin by her mom, and she tries to play it off here, just just breeze past it, like, hey, what's the fuss about? As long as we have it, like, we're golden. I can tell she's like experienced at this, like trying to like she does something wrong, but then she's like, well, you're the crazy one for admonishing or like caring about it. What's your take on Maddie's personality? Did you find her likable in general?
I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm not particularly invested in the characters, right? So I'm watching this more. It's interesting because I find myself often dipping in and out of shows just by merit of sort of walking in and out of various Grey's Anatomy episodes or Gossip Girl episodes that my girlfriend's watching. So I've sort of calibrated myself to this way of watching these very episodic, very in the tradition of soap opera style shows by just looking at these characters and saying, okay, what are they up to? And not really thinking about them too far beyond that. I do like the long extended bit in the next episode about her thinking the iguana is Daniel.
Oh yeah.
I like that a lot. Otherwise, like I'm not really, my needle's not really going to be moved by any of these characters. I fear.
Sure. That's fair. That's a fair perspective to have. Just trying to like analyze that they're like just how the narrative beats play out. Ursula scolds her for keeping secrets from her, and like this is like from my perspective like a rare time when her mom like actually like stands up and like doesn't roll over to her daughter, like taking on the hexerin spells without supervision. Like, hey, this is serious. Like, you need to actually take this seriously and like not keep secrets from me. And like and what's interesting is like she's less worried about the fact that like a normal parent would be about like her lying, like just the fact that 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 she kept it hidden and lied about her, like she said like, oh, I don't have it, I didn't get it, but so that's an interesting angle with her, like, and like I think says like you can read into that quite a bit about like what they're like the way she's been raised probably is. Maddie rolls her eyes and says that she knows, like, I can see how serious this is. All right, fine. Like, essentially, like, all right, get off my back about it. Okay. Um, and so Ursula hands the Hexerin back, but not before angering her by saying she's going to hold on to Maddie's favorite shoes until she proves she's trustworthy. Um, like, and and there's, I think, clearly a tinge of like, yes, I can wear these shoes that my daughter looks good in. I can still rock these, you know, pretty well. Did you feel that
Yeah, there's always a bomb like that on these shows, I feel.
in the next scene? Robert and Tommy, Daniel's two younger brothers, they skip school and they hide at Iridium High. They want to set up another prank on Maddie, another oatmeal trap. This 2 episodes ago they did another oatmeal trap, and both were aimed at Maddie. Uh, they like set up they rig up this a device to dump oatmeal on her, and Maddie is returning to the old tricks, trying to play Daniel's feelings of being controlling, and in a pretty funny and revealing bit, insists on talking over the phone while they're in the same hallway. Daniel's like, I can't see why we can't just talk, and she, but I guess we can, you know, be on the phone if you really want. Um, she's like, this conversation is over. When he tries to like reason with her, um, she she hangs up when he's like standing a few feet behind her, and hangs up, and then Daniels tries to talk to her face to face, and he's like, Maddie, come on now, and she turns around and does the immature bit like, I hung up on you, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I
um,
like that a lot. I like this whole sort of portion at the school because I love the idea of doing another oatmeal trap,
mhm,
implying, as you said, that this is not the first and
right.
presumably not the last.
Yeah, this is
I
the
like
second
that.
on-screen oatmeal trap.
And I also really liked that bit as well. I don't know. I mean, it is a lot of bits. Like I was saying, we're moving pretty fast, but I think that if in the absence of those, I probably wouldn't have been as entertained by the show, if at all,
Sure.
really jumping into
Yeah.
it. So I think that makes it a fairly successful, like regularly serialized Nick show,
Hmm.
because a lot of the time, I'd be turning on Nick, and I mean, I'm looking for iCarly, but if iCarly's not on, I guess I'm just watching whatever's there for the next half an hour.
Hmm.
So, you're talking about how this is very continuity heavy, and it definitely is. But I also think with scenes like this, it's also just entertaining enough
Hmm.
that you
Yeah.
could pop that on when you're home from school at like what this to me this strikes me as like a 4 p.m. in the afternoon style show,
Right.
and I think it works well as that.
That's a very interesting perspective to have. Like, and no one that I've yet heard like watch some of these has like phrased it that way. That's I do largely agree. Like it's yeah, that there is, like, even if everything here is archetypal, it's like they know what to do. Like they know what buttons to push to like especially for a younger audience, like keep them going. And it's like interesting to like see from like our lens of like being older, like just trying to like see exactly what they were probably thinking in terms of like reaching those beats
Yeah.
for its intended audience. Yeah, I'm glad to like hear you phrase it that way. So Daniel and Maddie then launch into a conversation like with a bunch of beats that we already know, like of her trying to like get back to their previous like status quo, of like her being able to like back together with him, or dump him whenever she wants, uh, and which is which is how things were at the very start. And at the very start, Daniel was like, "No, I'm not doing this anymore. We're done." After she had been like, "What? You hurt my feelings. That's it. We're over." expecting that she'd be able to be like, we're back together now. I'm feeling better. All right. And so at the beginning, she's put her. Uh, he put his foot down. That's what's caused like somewhat of an emotional spiral for her. And so then Maddie says like, you you will get like she goes into a bit of like, all right, since you're playing my part, I'll play yours. I'm so sorry, Maddie. Well, let's please get back together with me. And he's like, no, but there couldn't possibly be anyone else you want to be with. And Daniel is stone faced, and Maddie says, is there someone else? Pauses. This is the part where you say no, and even if there is, you lie and say no. Which like, whew, if like I knew anyone who talked that way, that I would cut them out of my life so fast.
Yeah.
But also like, yeah, it says a lot that she can feel comfortable just like saying that, like so explicitly. Like she doesn't even care about her her own like dignity necessarily. Like well, I'll be together with you even if you don't want to be together with me. Just like I need to have like some level of like stability in this like level of control, I suppose. Like she already of course knows about Daniel being like interested enough in Emma, but like it was just at the beginning of this episode that they like made it official that they want to date each other. So Daniel's like, actually there is someone else. It's Emma. And so I guess this is the moment where Maddie is like explicitly told like not only is Daniel like flirting with Emma, but like they're like he is like actually wanting to date her now, and gives an angry gasp, and then he walks away, and watching this from a closet or inside lockers or something is Daniel's brothers, and they're like, wow, go Daniel, like he really stood up for himself, and then they decide to like put the icing on the humiliation cake, and in this moment they press the button and launch their oatmeal trap, and it dumps all over Maddie. And they snap a photo, which I thought was the best part of it. Just like, hey, we got this photo of what we did to Maddie at her school, and they watch her scream. Any other thoughts on the dynamic there?
I think you did a really good job covering it. I mean, I do like your note about the gas being dubbed in. I feel like I feel like there's a real heavy use of ADR in this show.
Oh yeah.
which I mean, if when you're watching this and you're a kid, I'm sure you don't notice or care.
Yeah, I definitely didn't notice that particular thing.
But I was watching, I'm like, that's very interesting, because I kind of feel like we're rolling with whatever that first take was of all of these line deliveries. But you can sort of tell, especially in a lot of reverse shots, like, oh, okay, they had him back in the booth for that. But in terms of character arcs, not just like pedantic production things, I noticed, I think you nailed it.
Sure thing. Thank you. And it's I know that they did a solid job for their target audience. I mean, look at me clearly, but also it's just me like poking fun from this vantage point of like, oh, I have better knowledge of like filmmaking and continuity now that I can just notice these things and be like, oh, ding, like CinemaSins ding right there. But yeah, that's just we're just having fun here. Then so sitting with the sharks, Emma's so smitten with Daniel that she just hears his name over and over in the conversation that that her friends are having. Like, oh, I heard this. We were talking to this guy Manny, and she's like, "What, Danny? Did you say Danny?" Andy O'Daniel was, and she's like, "Oh, Daniel, did you say Daniel?" And everyone's like, "Hey, Emma, what's going on? Like, you're being you sound rather flighty. Like, what's going on?" She makes an excuse like, "Oh, I just wanted to use Daniel's English notes, and I didn't get all the notes." And then Tony, okay, what did you think of Tony in general being dropped in this show? What did you feel about him in general?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was all right. I mostly like him getting punched or strangled or in some other way bothered by who is it? It's Andy, right?
Yeah,
Who's doing that?
yeah,
Yeah, I like that dynamic a lot. I thought that was very fun.
sure. And yeah, I when I prepared the like catch-up guide for you and I wrote all the character descriptions that I wrote in there that well, I don't know if I've talked about this too much like within my episode, but to my eye, Tony like felt like relatable to like how I saw the way Tony talks and sees the world like felt pretty relatable to like what my experience was at that age. And it was like, is he's like sort of, and it's like as opposed to like the way Sophie acts, which is like very like outlandishly like in Cloud Cuckoo Land. Um, uh, Tony is like a bit relatably like neurodivergent, I think. Um,
Yeah.
and like so a bit lacking in social cues, but like desperately trying to fit in, and like that was evidenced by him like really wanting to join the swim team, even though he's a pretty nerdy kid. And I think it's pretty evident that he's like desperately trying to like get with Emma, even though she likes someone else.
Right.
Like it's evidenced in this moment where he's like falls over himself to like give her his notes. Like, look, Emma, I these my notes are super detailed. They're sticky noted and color coded and highlighted. And but then when Andy wants to use them, he's like, no, these are for Emma. I'm trying to give these to Emma. And like that's something I could very well see like myself doing at a younger age. Like, I just really want this girl to like me. Um, and like I feel like so like a bit socially isolated, so just any foot in the door I can, I'll just try and desperately cling to any like semblance of that. And like is he didn't like have the enough tact to be like, okay, Andy, it's like, sure, you can use my notes in that moment particularly. uh, that does any part of this what I've been saying like resonate with you as well?
No. However, I like what you're pulling out of it because I think that the way that these shows work best is like in, I mean, obviously it's fantastical by nature, but I
Yeah.
think the archetypes work very well in allowing you to find one that does resonate personally.
Sure.
And I'd have to think back about the ones that resonated most strongly with me, but I think about like Freddie and iCarly
Sure.
as somebody who resonated more with me because I think a shyer character would have been a line of best fit for me in high school.
Sure.
I wasn't volunteering my notes. How about?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely like wasn't like as like of the presence of mind to be like, oh, I do like really great notes and I'm like a straight A student all the time, but like the particular idea of like, oh, I can do this thing that might make the girl I like happy. Oh, I uh, uh and like happy in the moment, which like might translate to her like seeing me the way she sees others in the future. It's
Yeah.
something. And I know that's just my read like helicopter view, like seeing into it now. That's
Yeah.
just I know most of this like almost certainly wasn't intended, but just a different lens. These.
No, I think that's great. I think that's why you're perfect for going through the show in such detail like this.
Thank you so much. So, so importantly, when Tony and Andy have a tug of war over Tony's notebook, it they lose control of it, flings out, it hits Diego in the nose, and after he holds it in pain for a second, he grasps his nose, and then an icicle is suddenly there, and everyone's like bewildered, like what why is there an icicle on your nose? Like what? Uh, and he's like tries to play it off like he knows what the reason is. Like, my nose was just runny, and Tony's like, it looks like frostbite, and then Max like rushes him off to the nurse's office. We'll get back to that in a minute. Like, I tried my best to like cover each character and their plot in order, but like with this show you can't. Like that like every scene is like so is like intertwined in a way of like, well, this has to happen before this moment, and like and like the scenes are so short. I try to group them together, but but like little different beats like prevent me from doing that. I have to like go in the order that they do. Maddie's in the bathroom with her Panthers, Katie and Sophie, and Maddie has to be. I laughed at this. She has to be reminded by Katie that she can cast a spell to get the oatmeal off, and she's like, I'm gonna get rid of that vermilion, Emma, and then in a classic Sophie bit, every kids show of this ilk has a character like this who's like sometimes really ignorant and like doesn't know their left shoe from the right shoe, but also can like spout complicated definitions of words. Um, she's like, I think you mean vermin. Vermilion is a dark color red derived from the vermilion root, and and then Maddie, in a moment that really made me laugh, cuts her off by flinging a bit of the oatmeal that's on her. Shut up. And so then she casts the spell to remove the oatmeal while walking out into the hallway. Instead of doing it with like within the confines of the restroom they're in, she's pretty flagrant with magic, and and she goes out into the hallway. She sees Emma and Daniel talking and is like about to like she's just like had it. She's like about to hex them like I'm gonna do something awful to them with magic, and is like ready to cast a spell, but then the principal approaches her with her creepy shadow, and just like in a bold moment, she just grabs Maddie's finger mid spell, like, I don't think you want to do that. And yeah, speaking of archetypes, what do you think of the execution of the like obviously like loving being evil villainous principal?
Yeah, I thought it was well done. I mean, I actually thought that the image of her shadow on the wall was sort of surprisingly evocative for a show like this.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite nice.
Uh, yeah, it's I love just how obviously evil she loves to act. Just like, yes, I talk creepily like this all the time, and and like I even before we know that she's a witch, she's like, I'm gonna put these kids that I don't like their swim team and it's gonna be on the extinction list, and I'll say that to their face.
Yeah.
um, so Principal Torres interrogates Maddie in her office, and she turns Maddie into a frog and back in order to get answers about Emma out of her. What I think is pretty noteworthy is that even like we know how much Maddie dislikes Emma and is like, willing to like do awful things to her, but she's not instantly like throwing Emma under the bus here. Like even under this pressure, like being turned into a frog and back, she's like trying to deflect, and like you have a weird aquarium of frogs. Why do you have that? When she's asked point blank, is Emma a witch? And which I think is pretty evocative of like maybe deep down like Maddie like cares about Emma a bit, and I think that's like it's foreshadowing of like them getting closer by the end of this season, but it's like a pretty like subtle but also obvious way of signaling like, oh, she's not like totally just like, oh yeah, Emma's a witch, like instantly, like even under pressure, to do that. Did you find that interesting?
Yeah, and I mean, well, really, to be honest, in that scene, I was sort of mostly taken by the heavy lift that a couple simple cuts do to make her a frog and back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
it's yeah, interesting. It's like not the worst done that you could do it. Yeah.
yeah, that's not too bad. No, but I don't have too much to add about the characters there beyond what
Sure.
you said.
Yeah. Fair enough. But eventually, Maddie does squeal, on but probably about details that the principal knew already that she just really wanted to get like full confirmation on. Um, So meanwhile, Daniel invites Emma to Tommy's birthday party, and she says yes, picking doing that over the same old with Andy, her dad. Uh, Tommy and Robert rush over to them, revealing that they skipped school. They took a sabatini. With they meant to say sabbatical. With but essentially they Emma's like, that's just a fancy word for saying they skipped school, and it's pretty funny here how when they reveal the prank on Maddie, or is it, would you call it a prank, or is it just, harassment to just dump oatmeal on someone in the middle of the hallway? I don't know. Um,
It's debatable. I think oatmeal still errs on the side of prank. If it had been like, I don't know, I don't know, oil, it probably would have been more like harassment. How about?
sure. Um, so yeah. So Daniel says that as punishment, like, oh my God, mom and dad are gonna kill you. Say goodbye to your new iguana, Tommy. And Tommy's not upset. He's like, oh yes, I knew I was gonna get one. And then um, they tell about the oatmeal prank on Maddie. And in a hilarious moment, Emma's like, no way. And it's like adding to that is like Daniel doesn't know the true like extent of the of Emma and Maddie's acrimony, and so he's like, what? Why are you why are you happy about this? So he gives her a look of that, and she's like, I mean, that's bad, very bad. um, that's one of my favorite moments in these episodes. She just can't contain her glee, like she's like with them, like we both hate Maddie, yeah. Um, so at the nurse's office, Lily is stunned by Diego's icicle, and equally by learning that he tried to burp on it to melt it. Um, so so she starts thinking, like, with her knowledge of the magical world, that he might be a Kanai. Matt gives Diego another hug as he leaves. He tried to like stay there and presumably skip out on class by being there as emotional support. But so Lily rips the icicle out and then starts asking questions about how it happened, and then Julio meanwhile hears about the icicle at this, like, as they're about to start swim practice after school. He hears about the icicle and he's like, oh no, the nurse might be about to find out like more about the Kanai thing, because he's in on that at this point. And so Julio comes in, sees the situation, and then shoos Diego off to swim practice, being like, we're done here. um, and uh, and then they get into an argument about like, hey, that wasn't cool. I was seeing a patient, and then Lily lets slip that she knows about Kanai. Like, he has all the signs with breathing fire or burping fire, and having ice powers, that he might be. And then Julio like intuits like, oh yeah, Kanai. And how do you know about Kanai's? So then they just walk out into the cafeteria, and they like sort of spill their secrets to each other. She tells him that she's a witch, and like a powerless witch, a guardian status essentially, and that he is just a human, but knows about magic through being adopted by the principal. That's a revelation to us at this point. Like, I'm adopted, and I I don't have any genetic like connection to magic, which surprises Lily. The principal's watching this through like a magic mirror type spell situation of like, oh, I see that Julio is readily giving up information to the enemy. Emma has Tony meet her at the 7 after swim practice, and needs to talk to him about knowing about magic, essentially saying like, I'm sorry I'm about to do this to you. And then the scene cuts. I'd love to get your impression. What did you feel as though something did, like, she did actually do something there at this moment, like erase his memory?
Um, I don't know. I mean, what's your thought on it?
Okay, so a bit of a call forward. So Lily, for a bit of context, Lily told Emma that she needed to erase Tony's memory of him learning about magic, but there was also with her being like a beginner witch, and like with an imperfect spell, that she might erase in an attempt to do that, like his entire memory of his life. and so Emma was super reluctant to do it for that reason. So I think Emma, well, and also like later scenes occur, like not in these episodes, but in like a couple from now, where Tony is aware of magic. So I think this cut was like subtly meant to signal like, oh, she might not have done a memory spell at all. Like she might, like that this cut might have hidden a segment where she was like, no, I can't do this. I was meant, and like maybe spills her guts to Tony, like, oh, I was meant to like erase your memory, but I just can't, you know. Um, I that's my theory there. So it cuts to a scene where Emma and Andy are hanging out, and Emma tells Andy that she erased his memory, and Andy jokes, "Oh, you should have erased the part of his personality where he loves magic so much." And then Emma retorts like, "Oh, I could also erase the part of you that loves tools so much." Andy says like, "Oh, if you erase that, then I might be like a panther." And which knowing about the show and what happens in a couple episodes is a not is is a foreshadowing bit for, because Maddie will cast a spell on Andy to make her act like one of her underlings. That is something that happens pretty soon on, but they are like, we're gonna go to the we're gonna go to the party, and we're just not gonna worry about Maddie and the Hexerin for right now. We're washing our hands of that for right now. We're gonna have fun. Daniel makes his brothers apologize to Maddie and pay for her dry cleaning for what they did. And she's like, okay, I forgive them. Now you forgive me. We'll get back together. And then Daniel's like, no, but thanks for forgiving them. Bye. Over video chat. We'll get to exactly what Maddie does in her anger in a minute. But the party gets going. Tommy's birthday party. Daniel and Emma are there, and they make I-Guana dance puns. And you want to dance with me once the iguana gift is brought up, and to Andy's cringe. Um, so Maddie's about to smash her laptop in response to what Daniel said, and then tries to cast a spell to turn Daniel into a lizard. And she shows more creativity than she normally has, and spells like she rhymes lizard with I'm a female wizard, which I liked pretty well. So she was like, no, wait. She pulls back after saying the full spell. She was like, oh, wait, I can't do that. I can't kiss a former lizard. That's her hang up. That was pretty funny. And then so they rush over to his house, unsure if the spell went through. Sophie has a photographic memory of like, oh yeah, Daniel was right there by that wall. I remembered that poster behind him in the video chat. When they see this is a hilarious bit of contrivance, how there happens to be an actual lizard that they happen to see it, but not Daniel the human when they sneak into the party. And then what did you think when Sophie did the Vulcan hand gesture? That's a reference that they threw in.
Yeah, I don't. I was. Do they do a lot of references like that?
Not as far as I could see. That's what makes it so funny. It's like out of nowhere. Like, oh my god, Sophie's a Trekkie.
Yeah, I wasn't. I wasn't sure when that happened if that's sort of like a trope of how this show is written or not. If it's sort of like a random one-off reference, I suppose that's pretty peculiar.
Yeah, and it's like I love things like that where like, oh my god, like we get a glimpse into Sophie's inner life. Like, oh my god, she's a Star Trek fan, and neither of her friends like or they might get the reference, but they just cringe at it. And
Sure.
but like, we come in peace, and does the finger thing. It's a pretty one-off thing. I think it was just meant to be another Sophie eccentricity. Um, yeah. Was it to your eye that the three of them are like pretty blatant copies of the three plastics?
I don't know. I actually I'm not familiar with the reference, I have to say.
You haven't watched Mean Girls?
I haven't watched Mean Girls.
Oh, fair enough. So, sorry, I just rolled the die there.
Well, that's a good. I mean, that's a good note. Just thinking about what it's likely pulling from, sort of.
Yeah.
This confluence of influences. I mean, as the episode is ending here, I thought it was interesting how both of them are, they're very reliant on cliffhanger to motivate watching the next episode. They don't really feel quite as self-contained as I sort of expected that they would. I mean, a lot of sitcom is quite self-contained, and if there is some sort of larger plot thread, there's at least some sort of arc that did conclude, where that wasn't really the case here. And I think it returns me to what you were saying before about the telenovela and sort of genre. It was interesting to me that this wasn't sort of at least in that respect as archetypally like a young adult sitcom as I thought it might be. The cliffhanger was I think a fairly useful tool in both episodes.
Exactly. Like I think to my eye now, that's probably a big element of why I was like, oh, I have to watch more of this. You know, like that, like everything is pretty quick, short, and then they're like, oh, things are coming to a head, and we have and you know the episode next is gonna like pick right back up there. So like you could essentially like put these all on an editing timeline and have it play out for like 16 hours, you know, and just have it be one long thing that has no sign of like it being you know having these like neat episode breaks. That's which is an interesting quality that most other shows of its type don't do, you know. And so they see the iguana, they're fooled by it, and so Maddie decides to make off with Daniel. And so they bring the iguana home to Maddie's house, and at a remark about its fingernails, Sophie says she knows a great salon that takes iguanas. I bet that maybe that is a thing in Florida of all places. I don't know. But then there's yet another imitation of Ursula telling Maddie what not to do. Maddie Winky, you were not supposed to turn people into objects or animals or and apparently she specifically said or turning your boyfriend into a reptile, which I can absolutely buy. And then another moment that just stuck in my mind. Maddie says that her mom must be jealous of everything that she can do, and that's why she's laying down the law so much. And Katie says, "Aren't we all?" And then Maddie's like, "What? What? I didn't say anything." The pretty revealing about their dynamic. Like, "Aren't we all jealous of you?" What'd you say? Nothing. Then they put Danny Guana in the closet, and another. You commented on me like noting like an ADR issue, and I noted there was just the way Katie delivered this next line sort of bugged me. She puts emphasis on the wrong word. Like, do you want me to make him a little nest or something?
Yeah.
Instead of make a little nest or something. It smacks of like someone like hasn't like been given proper direction. Like that's something that would happen to like me at a younger age, like trying to direct someone else, like say this line, and I'm like not experienced enough to like give them like proper like time or motivation to like of the character like do it more naturally. Make him a little nest or something. But then Maddie wants to keep Daniel just like this, compliant and obedient. Which I was like, oh boy, that's pretty unhinged even for her. That feels like serial killer-ish to me. She is just a child essentially. So, oh yeah, Tommy and Robert at the birthday party cut back to the previous evening. Actually, this is why the continuity is all over the place, or like editing of like scenes is all over the place. Tommy and Robert go to look for the iguana early. Emma notices them, and is like, oh yeah, I didn't see anything. You're not secret, safe with me. And then they haven't seen Daniel in a bit and do an impression of when Daniel said he had to like go off and do something else, like handle an emergency. They do an impression of Daniel's serious face. They like do an exaggerated frown. And Emma's like, wow, really great impression of Emma. Really great impression of Daniel, guys. Then they realize the iguana is missing and blame Emma for letting him out. and Emma's like, what? Did, did I? She's thinking she very well might have, just through leaving the door open. So then Maddie puts on an act for her mom of being sick and gives a pretty funny, overwrought display. But like, oh yeah, I'm all right. Blows into tissue. As her mom leaves and she pretends to go to sleep, she does the exaggerated form of snoring, like num 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 num. Which have you ever in real life heard anyone snore that way?
I have not.
Yeah. Am I right in assuming that would be a sign to you of someone like putting on an act of sleeping? Uh,
Yeah,
Sure.
I think that's why these sorts of shows are fun though.
Yeah.
The sort of exaggeration and camp I think is definitely charming, and I think you'd mentioned something to me before we had done the recording about how you enjoy the camp,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that that's fine. There's sort of an
Definitely.
earnestness to it of sort of knowing your audience and understanding that they will appreciate that kind of joke. I think it's effective.
Exactly. Um, Yeah, Emma is worried about Daniel. So it's the next day now. Emma is worried about Daniel ignoring her text messages, and that he might blame her for the great iguana escape. She phrases it that way. Andy in a pretty funny running bit of you should do magic things for me that I want. I should be able to get the benefit as your friend of magic. You should be able to turn me into other episodes she'll be like, you should turn me into a saber-toothed tiger or something, because I'm really tomboyish, you see. um but and can't be really just obvious forms of this is who this character is, this is the archetype. But then Andy says that Andy must that that Daniel must be mad because at the previous night, Emma didn't give Andy Pegasus wings that she wanted. And Emma's like, wait, so really you think that Daniel is mad at me for not giving you wings? And then Andy says, yeah, us sharks are tight that way. That was another favorite moment here. Did you enjoy uh, Andy sometimes, but in moments like this, trying to be like, hey, I'm friends with a witch, I should get to be able to do cool stuff like that. She should do stuff like that for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I thought it was a cute moment. I think their relationship comes across very effectively even without context of the rest of the show and basically all their exchanges.
Definitely, but yeah, it's like it's a their friendship is a real example. It's like a pretty endearing example of opposites attract, and they rib each other a lot, but they're also just genuinely they have genuine closeness, and really ride or die. Um, Things like this are why personally Andy is my favorite character. Um,
Yeah, obviously I've seen such a small slice of the show, but I agree. Actually, I really liked Andy.
uh, Awesome. It's fun. My stepdad's name is Andy, with a Y, and
Sure.
so when I had him catch the premiere of season 2, and I was like, so, and I said to him, so Emma, the main character, has a best friend who's a tomboyish, and her name is Andrea, but you'll never guess what her nickname is. And he was like, is it Andy? And I was like, yeah. Sophie and Katie visit Maddie during the day after she pretended to be sick to her mom. Presumably, her mom's out of the house now. And then they bring a giant dog bed that Sophie's dog is too big for. And the dog is presumably named for Maria Conchita Alonso. I've actually met her. And they could have made a Maria Conchita Alonso bit relating to Emma. That's just helicopter eye view. Um, um, Bit of a lower answer in myself. But then there's shouldn't you be at school? Shouldn't you be at school? Don't answer my question with a question. Here's the part where I insert an Honora touche joke.
Very good.
Bring in the hot references. Um, but yeah, I was about to give the cinema sin ding for the show not knowing the 2024 reference to put in.
Well, here's the thing, actually, Raina. First of all, Every Which Way and Honora you probably couldn't pick two pieces of media further apart in tone.
Yeah.
But it's a funny reference to bring in here because as we sort of go through in this next portion of the episode, the iguana
Honora-esque.
hunt is in some ways quite Honora-esque, which I find amusing.
Yeah. Well, that's really funny to say, but it is kind of true. And like the whole Maddie going on like a wish fulfillment adventure with the iguana is like reminiscent of the beginning of Honora a bit. You know, I don't know.
I think
Um,
there's a video essay in here for you.
yes,
The
yes,
parallels
totally,
between Every Which Way episode 11 and Sean Baker's Honora.
totally. I will get on that right away. Um, and it's like I compared a previous episode to the British film The L-Shaped Room, is the which I brought up to Steven, and he was like, and we jokingly said like, oh yeah, the comparisons are so obvious, it's almost not even worth mentioning. But that was our best tangent yet.
That's very good. I agree.
So I think this is a new level of screwed up for Maddie, where she's like, I'll only turn Daniel back when he sees how great we are together. The other two hysterically laugh like, we're great together, and then they're like, and which, and of course Maddie is angry and gets them to shut up. Then she brings the iguana on a date. It's a romantic montage, like in Honora, like we're going on a date to the Seven, to the park, and they put in an original song like "Skipping on Sunshine." We're tripping on light and skipping on sunshine. Like, isn't like in like to make this like for the kids rather sweet, but for me at this point like rather dissonant. Like this is pretty creepy actually. Like she thinks it's a real it's the guy that she knows like as an iguana that she's like essentially holding captive and making act out all these things, and and she takes pictures of herself with the iguana that she shouldn't be able to. She doesn't have a tripod or anything. Andy and Emma see from misinformation that Daniel and Maddie are back together. Uh, Daniel corrects the record, saying that misinformation is misinformed. I'm really surprised that it took them this long to make that joke in the show. Misinformation, you know?
This character of Misinformation is very interesting to me because I feel like all of these shows on Nickelodeon have to have some sort of in-universe phone and or social
Blog.
media app or
Yeah.
blog or something like this.
Yeah.
I didn't really put together until this show that like yeah, they've all got these.
Yeah, yeah.
Social media is cool and it must be a plot point in all of these shows for forever and always.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense. Like, you know, we have these things to like stay connected, and like say back at this point, you know, most of us were using Facebook predominantly, and like having groups for our local groups. Yeah. Tommy supposedly went on a hunger strike in response to the iguana disappearing, and Daniel tells Emma not to feel guilty, saying that he's starting a search party, and and Emma and Andy agree to help out, and then Ursula catches Maddie for what she did, and though she tries to lie with relative smoothness for this show, like, no, this is just an iguana that appeared, and I put a bow tie on, and and but then she comes clean and saying like, no, this is Daniel, and we're back together. Oh yeah, does a dance, and then the iguana momentarily disappears, and then um, Ursula's like, no, Maddie, wait, nope, he's not missing. And then I said to myself, the iguana's pooping in her shoes, isn't it? And then Ursula says, yeah, he's pooping in your shoes. Um, and and Ursula is less upset about this, notably, than about the lie with Maddie and the Hexerin. Did you feel that?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, to sort of lump a bunch of plot points together to make my sort of observation here, what really
Mm-hmm.
stuck with me in this 11th episode you had me watch is this character of the iguana.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously he gets transformed back into a person.
Oh, that's the
But,
chameleon.
oh, sorry, the chameleon. Because what's weird to me about the chameleon doing that Sorry, I'm so taken by this part of the episode. I have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
talk about it.
yeah, yes,
This
yes,
because the premise in our characters' minds is that the iguana is Daniel.
yes.
And so when we revert the iguana into a person, that person will be Daniel. But this chameleon that comes from who knows where, it's unimportant.
Mhm.
The chameleon is just a chameleon.
Yeah,
So when you have this boy who becomes a chameleon, I was thinking, okay, well, so who is this going to turn out to be? And it turns out to be, in fact,
just a
nobody.
chameleon. Yeah,
It's just a chameleon. And so this chameleon, being a young man shape shifting and color shifting against the wall or hiding under the bed, flitting its tongue.
yeah,
It's very peculiar. I think it was a very peculiar episode because also you mentioned this hunger strike. Going on
mm.
hunger strike because your chameleon is your iguana is
Iguana.
missing is a very funny idea.
Yeah,
And then I find the chameleon material quite strange because I
yeah,
think it opens up questions. This is not a real human. You have the body of a human, but the mind of a chameleon.
yeah.
There's a body horror element to this episode of this Nickelodeon show you got me to watch.
Oh yeah, like yeah. This episode is like opening new doors of like unhinged quality. Yeah, that's like you're making me think of like yeah that is fascinating. Just yeah, and don't you worry. That as far as I remember, there's plenty of weirdness with this chameleon turned boy because like not to say too much, but there's like romantic involvement there.
Does he? So he becomes a recurrent character?
Well, he's there for a bit anyway.
That's extremely odd.
Yeah,
There's no good parallel between that and Honora. I think that's where our
right.
tangent ends.
Exactly. Um, so there's a for the search party. Andy splits the group of the sharks and Emma into teams, and she pairs Daniel and Emma together. And Tony conspicuously tries to get with Emma, but Andy is like, no, 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 you're going with Mac, and because he's direction challenged. That man, and yet another like comedy relief ignorant character there. And so they split up with walkie talkies. We'll get into that moment with Tony and Andy arguing over the walkie talkies, which I think is directly stolen from a bit in a Victorious episode, like Robbie loving his walkie talkies. You know what I mean?
That's another show I watched a lot.
Yeah. So Maddie's offended when she's told she can't keep the iguana. She tries one last spell after a bunch of failed ones from the Hexerin. It misses the iguana, who escapes and hits the chameleon that's in her room for some reason. I need to get into that. There's just a chameleon that appeared in Maddie's room, like, which, and they just like it's just there. The show just expects you to roll with that. It appeared on the second floor of her house.
Yeah, they say it just sort of got in the window there. I mean, my grandparents live in Florida. I've never seen a chameleon there. Doesn't mean they don't exist.
Sure.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah. The iguana runs away, and Ursula has her best moment yet. Girl has lost her mind. um, which, man, that was I really love that. And but the spell that Maddie tried hits the chameleon, as you mentioned, who turns into a teenage boy, flapping its tongue and crawling around. And then Maddie says she realizes Daniel, when she catches up with the iguana again, must be sad and confused, much like with her being a witch at first. That's a slight bit of like peek behind the curtain of vulnerability, like not like just being the like outward mean girl all the time. And witches aren't like you see in the movies. We're like those superheroes you like, only much prettier. um, which I think is an especially campy bit right there.
Yeah.
And she's always hearing only what she wants to hear and see. That's why she loved just having this silent animal as her boyfriend, essentially. Andy and Emma flash back to like try and figure out what happened with the iguana. They realize that Daniel had to go clean up a sudden mess at the Seven. Mac had made up a canned eyes exploding excuse for like a huge mess happening, referencing the Kanai thing. And this, of course, goes over Daniel and Emma's heads, canned eye, and which Diego cringed at, but like no one recognized what that meant. And then they bond over the Space Cowboys Chase Through History card game. And Daniel thought Emma / all girls would think that it was lame since Maddie did, but it's really endearing that Emma and Daniel bond over this, and like I think it's cute. It's like reminds me of a friendship I had in high school, and like talking this way, like, oh yeah, this card, the we gotta play this game, and I really want this Space Cowboys Chase Through History game to exist.
I thought that that was a really fun moment. I think that that was a good. You were speaking about relatability before. This idea that there's something that they both love but don't think it's cool enough to love, and so it must be scoffed at until you're safe, until you know that you're with somebody else who likes a thing. I thought that was a nice moment.
Exactly. I figured you might relate to that,
I
given
do.
that, yeah, given your sort of MO with your commentary. She tells him to own the geek side of himself, break the stereotypes of him being like the jock, and then and he tells her to own her glitter side, and she's like, "Oh, I own the glitter," which sounds very much like one of my friends in high school. Like, and then they hold hands, and then they come back home, and Tony, like they regroup at the house, having not found the iguana, and Tony complains about the range of walkie-talkies compared to cell phones, and Andy makes a joke about like, well, there's plenty of range. Well, I there's a close enough range between my arm and your face, and goes to hit him, and
Yeah, yeah. Moments like that are why she was my favorite character from these two episodes.
exactly, and so meanwhile, Sophie calls Maddie lucky for having a simultaneous pet and boyfriend, while Katie confronts Maddie for having gone too far, and then but then the other shoe drops. They see that this iguana actually isn't Daniel through the misinformation blog, um, and Katie counts down to Maddie like having a meltdown. Like she sees the image, 3, 2, 1, ah! and but yeah, just love that they know each other so well that way, or at least Katie like is able to predict Maddie's behavior that way, and
Yeah.
Emma tells Andy how smitten she was with Daniel, having butterflies in her stomach, and Andy makes a joke about wanting to barf, then defends herself. Like I thought that joke was right on the line. That phrasing of it was I love that. They like referencing butterflies in the stomach, and then and Andy says like it makes me want to barf out what I have in my stomach.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, it's like a very good and relatable friendship. Like they feel like able to like rib each other, and like not exactly see eye to eye on their interests or like level of sappiness, but like make up quickly, and that so they try and retrace their steps from the evening. They go line by line. Andy makes up a few. Andy invokes the Rashomon effect, where she's like, "Yes, I said this line about the I compliment the architectural details that the architect put into your abode." um, and I just really felt the need to juxtapose this show Every Which Way with the 1949 film Rashomon.
Of course, of course. I'm sure that was cited in the writers' room.
Exactly. And so apparently during the party, Andy made a remark about dip not even being 7 layers. It was only 6. And then Matt comes in. He and Tony and Daniel all had the same shirt. And then Andy and the kids make fun of them for it. He expands the shirt with water. Like they throw him like something like something like a shirt that's all like folded and wadded up super small that you have to then expand with water. Have you ever seen one of those? I haven't.
I had a lot of those I had a lot of those, but they were hand towels, and they would have like Batman on them.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd seen in that form for sure.
That's to me that's so like late 2000s.
Yeah, this
That's
era.
so Zenji coded. She should have had like sea monkeys. That's the only more Gen Z thing you could put in water, I think.
Exactly. Um, Both Emma and Daniel left the door open in the room that the iguana was in, as far as they know. So then they go to sleep and agree to search more the next day. The next day, as they go to search again, Tony and Andy get into another fight about the radios, and Tony goes on a tirade about like, hey, our phones have a range of as long as we want, but the walkie-talkies only have a range of 500 feet, and we can actually see each other's locations. And like, can't you see it? Aren't like can't you see how these walkie-talkies are useless? Like he essentially, through not words, like calls her stupid, and the others are behind Andy and in Tony's line of sight are like signaling for him to stop talking, like no, no, stop talking. And Tony's like, what? He didn't understand that social cue. He just went on too far, and then Andy is like, Andy then tries to strangle him, um, which is yeah the what real comedic highlight. Then Daniel brings Emma home after in the final scene of the episode. So meanwhile, Maddie decides to once they see that the jig is up with the iguana, they decide to send it back, but have it be in Emma's hands, and then like pin the blame for a supposedly stolen iguana on Emma as like the best way that they can to like kill two birds with one stone. And so they had so Daniel and Emma romantically say their goodbyes after the night of searching, and then the iguana appears on the couch, and Emma's very confused, like, what? How'd this get here? And it's like on the dog bed as well. Oh, bit I forgot to mention with the dog bed. It's a giant dog bed, but Sophie said that her dog is too big for it now, which is like a blink and you'll miss it sort of like, oh
Sure.
my god, how big is her dog? Um, but but then Daniel comes in. He's like, "Oh, I forgot my phone or whatever." He comes back in and then sees the iguana in her hand, and he is left to draw all sorts of conclusions about. Wait, did you steal the iguana and like are like holding it? So like for some sort of like end, we're left with Emma unable to explain that. But then Maddie's like gleeful that she's washed her hands of the situation with the iguana, and then they discover the chameleon turned boy and in the room, like having like color shifted into the wall, and and then they freak out, like you know, pretty like surreal thing to find, and like she wasn't aware that her spell like hit this chameleon, and so then they're left with that situation as well. Chameleon boy in the room, bum bum bum, and that's where we end off on these episodes.
Yeah, I think you really got me in for two busy episodes. I don't even really know what the
Yeah.
right adjective is. It's
The,
compelling. How about? I would say that I found the plot very compelling, and I truly
wow.
did. I mean, as we're sort of wrapping up, I was quite interested in the plot and our bits, our bits per minute. I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was quite effective. I mean, obviously you got to
BPM,
calibrate.
yeah.
Yeah, BPM, exactly. You got to calibrate your expectations to what the type of show is. But once I'd done that, I could really enjoy it for the plot. I mean, maybe if I watched it more, if I had a clearer sense of the characters as you do, I could connect to them more. But for the most part, I have to say, my little pit stop in Every Which Way Ville, I quite enjoyed. I think particularly because I ended up with these, I think you called them unhinged. So I'll agree,
Yeah,
unhinged episodes.
sort of thing. And so yeah, we're left to ponder what's going to happen with this chameleon, and I happen to know that yet more unhinged things happen there. But that's where we leave off. So thank you so much, Abram, for coming on and taking the time. It was so great to have this discussion with you, and for indulging me rather.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been so great to talk to you. I think we've gotten a really full and in-depth and interesting conversation, and I'm really grateful to have gotten your mind and look at this. So for everyone listening, this has been another episode of Every Watch Way. Follow the Every Watch Way Facebook page, and give it a review and a like on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And take care, and follow both Backlot Banter, and the BLB archives to see all of Abram's great content. And anything else you want to say as we end off, Abram?
Only last thing I have to say is that you have a fantastic title for this show.
Thank
It's
you
really a
so much.
dynamite title.
Thank you so much. It was when I thought of that title sprung into my mind just during a work shift one day that I knew I needed to make this show happen. So so
Nice.
glad you appreciate it. So everyone, take care, have an excellent week, and finally,
Best magical wishes.